Devin Booker goes off for a season-high 49 points in Chris Paul's return from injury. What did this game teach us about how those two guys will coexist throughout the rest of the season? That's what we're talking about on today's episode of Locked On Suns.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are back. This is Locked On Phoenix Suns. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and I'm your host, Brendon Kleen, a credentialed media member covering the Suns for the past 5 seasons and a contributor at Suns.com as well as Dime Magazine. Thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen today and every day. Help us grow this YouTube channel by scrolling down just a bit and hitting subscribe. You can also find us across every single podcast platform where you can also scroll down, maybe hit the back bar, whatever it might be, and subscribe and follow there as well. We're here for you every day, and we are not too far from the playoffs, so you are going to want to follow along, to buckle in, to hitch your wagon to me and this show, because man, does this team continue to put on a incredible display every single night. And we have to start with the man of the hour, Devin Booker, but of course, it was also, as I just said, the return of Chris Paul. So we're going to talk about both guys together because, yes, 49 points for Devin Booker, a season high, 17 and 13 for Chris. Also throw in 10 assists for Booker and only 5 combined turnovers for those two guys. There's a lot to dig into, but the interaction, the way that they played together, the way they played off of each other, who had the ball when, all of that I think is the most fascinating part of all of this. So that is where we will start, guys. Today's show brought to you by NBA TopShot. NBA TopShot is the future of being an NBA fan. Own officially licensed rare NFTs of the greatest moments from across NBA history. Sign up today at lockedon.nbatopshot.com. We'll hear more from those guys later in the show. 66 points, 23 assists, just 5 turnovers. 22 of 35 from the field. 21 combined free throw attempts because Devin Booker just decided, hey, you guys want to make a little bit of a story out of my lack of free throws? Well, here's some free throws for you. That is basically what he said to all of us. But setting that aside, again, the way that these guys played together is the interesting part. And what I mean by that is, so I like to think of this across the whole time Monty Williams has been coach of this team. Since he installed his system, since 0.5 became a word we all knew to use, we all learned what it meant. Think back to Rubio and Booker. From the jump, Monty was ultra impressed and had so many positive things to say about the way those two players, between just the two of them, communicating, studying, learning on the fly, were able to just hit the ground running, sharing playmaking duties. That was, up to this point, the best offensive season of Booker's career, in my opinion, when it comes to efficiency, combined with playmaking, combined with scoring. That 2019-2020 season peaks with the bubble. It's the most free throw attempts he's ever had in his career. It's basically the most assists and then not a lot of turnovers, and he's 35% from 3, 55% from 2. He really just figured it out. Last season, talk about this a lot with DeAndre Ayton when it comes to sacrifice. The same thing happened last year for Devin Booker. He clearly made it a point to play off of Chris, to commit to winning, to doing what his role was going to be every single night. Yes, there was 40-point games. Yes, there were 10 assist games. Yes, there were clutch shots. All-star performance from Devin Booker, clearly. But a little bit of a step back in terms of responsibility. Well, this season has been a little bit of a combination of those two all the way up through today. And since January 1st especially, the scoring has gone to another level, the efficiency has gone to another level, and then since the All-Star break, when Paul has been out, you're seeing Booker do both. He has to be the playmaker because, well, Cameron Payne was out for some of that, and Booker really had to be. He was starting at point guard, but even since Payne has been back and Aaron Holiday has made his impact, you are still seeing the ball in Booker's hands while Chris Paul has been out. But what happened tonight is that the ball stayed in Devin Booker's hands, and that might sound a little bit like an exaggeration because you look and you see that Chris Paul had 13 assists. But I feel like we are getting to that point where it is unspoken, it is telekinetic between Paul and Booker where they know. And so for me to say like, oh, the ball was in Booker's hands more than Paul's, I'm not saying that to mean that there was just some premeditated, okay, it's your turn, I'm not going to bother with it, go for it, and I'll stand over here in the corner and space the floor for you. It was not James Harden and Chris Paul, I guess, might be the best way to put it. It feels like that Ricky Rubio, Devin Booker relationship, but with a much more potent pick and roll player in Chris Paul, obviously a much more devastating scorer in isolation and a better shooter. You know why Chris Paul's a better player than Ricky Rubio. So for that dynamic to be able to transfer to these two players and have it still work is really exciting. And I just, the possibilities really start to open up when you are having two guys rolling at this level, two guys with points and assists, double-doubles. I mean, that is a real achievement and something that I just don't know how many teams are really going to be able to handle. And I can tell you for sure that Monte Morris, Bones Highland, Austin Rivers, and Davon Reed did not handle it. They didn't have anything to say about Booker when he got aggressive. They didn't have an ability to force those guys into quick decisions and mistakes. This offense got whatever it wanted, as obviously evidenced by 140 points. And then you have Booker going into just pure attack mode late, just like he did last night in Minnesota, where he's getting into it with fans. He's jawing with opposing players like Jeff Green and Chris Paul doing the same. And when they have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder on top of just playing good basketball, the Suns team is something else. We saw that throughout the entire playoffs. But I just feel like if we are seeing that sort of bubble rhythm from Booker and Paul is still able to put up 17 and 13, I mean, that's just not something we really saw last year. You remember in the finals, the 40-point game that Booker had. Chris Paul was not doing this. You know, Chris Paul was not a threat in those games. Booker was doing it because he had to, because nobody else was stepping up, because nobody else was open, and because the Bucks defense was forcing him to do that. In this game, you have Bridges closing the game, basically. In addition to Paul, you have Ayton still getting his 15-plus points. You have guys hitting threes like Crowder and Craig. It was one of the better offensive nights you will ever see from this Suns team. And Booker being the guy sparking that is a real departure from what it's normally been since Chris Paul was traded here. So really exciting, something to watch. And it was definitely an entertaining show for this first night. Want to talk about a few more of the positives, starting with Mikal Bridges and the way that the Suns seem to be able to have an answer for this Nuggets offense, even though the Suns offense seems to be too much for the Nuggets to handle. This is obviously dating back even to the second round last year. But first, folks, today's show brought to you by BetOnline. The college basketball's tournaments are finally upon us. I am honestly about to, the minute I hit stop on this show, jump over to the, what is it called? March Madness Live app, and I will be riding this University of Arizona run. Maybe by the time you're listening, they have already lost, and it's all a complete joke to you, but we all know how fun it is. And BetOnline.net is the number one source for all of your sports betting needs and info all throughout March. It remains the best spot for scores, podcasts, and news to inform your betting, and it's not just basketball either. BetOnline is your continued source across all sports, including live betting on games and your favorite Vegas casino games as well. So head to the website today or use their mobile app to learn more about the latest trends and action across the sports landscape. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, let's dive into Mikal Bridges' night tonight to start things off. 8 of 9 from the field, 22 points. He's doing it in the same ways we've been talking about. That turnaround mid-range jumper, he can do it from the right or the left. He likes to turn over his right shoulder. That is an unorthodox shot. It is just pitch perfect that a player who is as gangly and unique as Bridges in style and substance would be the guy who comes up with a signature shot as wonky as that one, but it is about as much of a sure thing as any shot that any Suns player has outside of maybe Chris Paul's elbow jumper and DeAndre Ayton's hook shot. I might put Bridges' turnaround mid-range shot third, above any Devin Booker shot, above the pull-up three in transition from Cameron Payne. Like, it is money. And that was his go-to tonight. But what is more impressive than even the shot going in or his comfort level taking it is the fact that late in games recently, he has been so accepting of a featured role. It's one thing when we were going into this season wanting to see a little bit more assertiveness from Bridges. It's one thing for that to come in the first quarter, in a blowout, in garbage time, when other players are injured or anything like that. But right now, it was the return of Chris Paul. It was Booker on his way to a 50-point night that apparently, side note, he is eternally prevented from getting to. And the Suns were in a pretty neck-and-neck game. And yet Bridges still was totally fine stepping up to the plate, taking those shots, having the ball in his hands. He had the dunk on a fake handoff to Booker late in the game. It was probably already out of reach, but it did feel like an exclamation mark on the game. And then he's, mean mugging the Nuggets, and he's up in the chest of, I believe, Cameron Payne, although I actually could have that wrong. That stuff is another level, and it speaks to the fact that the assertiveness and confidence have been building throughout the season. And now you get to a point where there's not very much self-doubt happening for Bridges. There's not a lot of hesitation going on when he has openings and opportunities. And it's going to be huge because I've talked about a lot. Booker getting to this level is the single most important development of the season. And then aside from that, we're not talking about the Suns going from the second round to a championship. We are talking about minor incremental improvements. Can one or two players make one or two more plays than they were able to in last year's finals? And that could truly be enough to make a difference between the Suns losing in the finals and winning a championship. And Bridges doing this in big moments is one of those types of changes and improvements that could be that difference. Want to also talk about the defense here, guys, on the note of positives here. It doesn't feel like Nikola Jokic ever goes off against the Suns. Obviously, you can look at the stats that he had in last year's playoffs, and I'm not going to argue with you, but his standard is so much higher that even a game where, yes, he was 9 of 10 from the field, 9 of 11 from the free throw line, 28 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists, but if you look at his numbers, that is a statistically quiet night. He had a team worst minus 15 when he was out there for the Nuggets tonight, which mostly speaks to the fact that actually, look, DeMarcus Cousins had a +5. So you would say it's because of who he was playing with or whatever. I guess the Nuggets bench tended to dominate. The plus-minus actually doesn't add up in this game. So Jokic being a minus 15 is a little bit more interesting. It speaks to them not playing well when he was out there across a bunch of different lineups. But the most important and key part of all of this is the turnovers. He had 8 turnovers in this game. And again, the Suns seem to be able to keep him in check. I think a lot of that, dating back to last year's playoffs, is Ayton just being able to survive in those one-on-one matchups, not allow Jokic to get what he wants incredibly easily. He also had 2 offensive rebounds, and those, I believe, resulted in putbacks or fouls. So there were not a lot of moments where he was just eating as a scorer in the post. He didn't get up a lot of threes. The damage was relatively minor, and he was looking to set up his teammates, and the Suns were able to get into those passing lanes and force turnovers off of those. The Suns had, 6 fast break points, but the Suns had 30 points off of Nuggets turnovers, and the Nuggets had 16 turnovers. So that's big. If you don't allow Jokic to, most nights he's going to do both. He's going to score and he's going to make plays for his teammates. If you can hold him to just doing one of those things, I think you walk away feeling pretty great. I think if you walk away from the game and he did neither of those things at an elite level, you are most likely going to win. And that's what we saw happen tonight, of course. Last but not least, I just think the positive here to get to is the Suns are the number 1 overall seed in the NBA, I think. I think that they clinched that. Let me see here. They just clinched something. I'm getting an email as I'm talking to you guys about it. They are definitely the number 1 seed in the West, and they may very well be the number 1 overall seed in the NBA as of tonight. I don't know what the East has to say, but as far as I know, the Memphis Grizzlies were the number 2 seed in the NBA. I think that the Suns have clinched home court for the entirety of all of this by winning tonight's game, and that deserves a massive round of applause. Just a huge accomplishment, and 8 more games left for the Suns to achieve the final real thing they need to do this year, which is 63 wins. Get to that franchise record. They could put a real mark on the franchise record, because I don't feel like they're going to go 3-5 the rest of the way by any means. I really think we could see 64, 65, 66 become that new record, and that is pretty uncharted territory. I mean, you get to 66 plus wins, and there are just not a lot of teams in league history that have done that, and most of them are champions. So needless to say, a huge tip of the hat, but the work is far from done. This team has been a blast to watch. Nights like this, for it to be a big moment in terms of clinching that and getting that seed wrapped up and locked in and cementing the accomplishment of the season that they've put together, but for it to also happen in a game that's just a freaking thrill to watch, it's exactly, with some trash talk and like emotional whatever, like that is what makes this team such a blast. Is they are dominant, but they're also incredibly fun. And like, I've used that Spurs comparison probably too much. I think there's a lot of things, and it's kind of interesting to think about how they're similar to the Spurs, but the Spurs never were this much of a blast to watch. They were never this much fun night to night. And so both of those things, being great, being fun. I mean, look, I don't have to tell you guys. If you're listening to this show, you know how special it's been, but huge, huge tip of the hat to this team for locking that down. On the note of Jokic, though, I want to get to the bench mob vibe check in the last segment. We'll wrap things up with a few normal recap segments here, but it actually might just be the bench mob vibe check, because I have a few major thoughts here on the rotation and lineups and minutes, all related to the bench. So we'll get to that in just a second, guys. First, though, another quick word from NBA TopShot. I am learning to really, really love NBA TopShot. We all have accounts here on the network. I've known about this becoming a sponsor for a while, and I've been digging around. I had tinkered like we all did in 2020 and 2021, and okay, I got my first pack and whatever, but you really dive in and you see how special it is. The officially licensed NFT of the NBA. It allows you to connect with a community of hundreds of thousands of NBA fans through not only those moments, which are like trading cards, but they're virtual and they are little clips, little snippets of games, but also other aspects. So you have challenges. The best way to earn exclusive moment NFT rewards is through challenges, where you can unlock those moments and treat TopShot like the best daily fantasy game out there. You can also be part of the community and get access to new events and mini games and things like that, including in-person treats like trips to the NBA Finals. There are endless opportunities. You can also use these moments like a stock market. So you have buying and selling. You are not just always buying from TopShot. You can buy from other people. You can sell your own. You can invest and then resell. It's endless. It's a great way to support not only your fandom of the NBA, but your support of this Phoenix Suns team. Get that Mikal Bridges' dunk. That would clearly be the moment of tonight's game. NBA Top Shot is the future of being an NBA fan. Own officially licensed rare NFTs of the greatest moments of this NBA season and throughout NBA history. Sign up today at lockedon.nbatopshot.com. Okay, folks, the Bench Mob Vibe Check is where we will wrap this show up. Again, the Suns winners 140 to 130. Right off the bat, if you looked at the box score and didn't know what was what, you will see one thing that I'm sure will jump off the page to you, and that is somebody who did not play, who got a DNP-CD. Yes, Aaron Holiday. Aaron Holiday did not play, and so it starts to open up some questions, because obviously, along with that, you had Chris Paul returning, but he only played 30 minutes, and Cameron Payne played 18. So, I believe they were not on the court at the same time at all, and those minutes would equal 48. So, I think that's fair to assume. 30 minutes for Paul, 18 minutes for Payne as the backup, and that was the point guard duties for the night. No Holiday and no, point Book as the smallest guy on the court. So that's interesting for a few reasons. One is, if you think back to what I was just talking about with Booker and Paul and how they were divvying up ball handling responsibilities, well, does that mean that if Booker now is somebody that Monty wants to put the ball into the hands of more often as a playmaker and creator, does that lessen the need for so many guards to be playing? Because Landry Shamet is still, despite a little bit of an uptick in how he's moving the ball and playing within this system, he is still a floor spacer first and foremost. He's somebody who's going to make threes and attack closeouts. So he's not really a point guard. You saw him still get 19 minutes. He's really Booker's backup, and he can play with Book too. But maybe that means Monty doesn't feel like he needs the Payne and the Holiday and the Paul minutes all to pile up. So much of what we talked about heading into the season was how will that Payne and Paul lineup, where those guys are on the floor together, develop over the course of the season? Because that was something Monty really did not touch in the regular season last year, but then he really leaned into it in the playoffs last season. So, okay, well, how does that continue to build out, and what can that multiple ball handler look do for the Suns offense? Well, that hasn't really developed, and now we're seeing Monty not even use it. Additionally, you have the Aaron Holiday factor where, on this show, of course, I'm not going to pretend like it wasn't me too. We were all over the moon about Chris Paul, about Aaron Holiday and the impact that he might be able to have. But it didn't come to pass tonight at all that Holiday played once Chris Paul was out there. Now, I will point out, so pre-Chris Paul injury, the Suns played the Clippers and won by 7 points at home. In that game, Paul was still healthy, clearly, played the full game, 35 minutes. Cam Payne was not in, he missed that game. But you had both Elfrid Payton and Aaron Holiday playing. So in that case, Monty did play two backups, but you also didn't have Landry Shamet. So basically, since we have seen Aaron Holiday start to get minutes for this team, you haven't had the full rotation. This honestly is the first game in, okay, no Cam Johnson tonight, I understand, but this is really the first game where the full rotation has been in there. You would imagine if Cam Johnson is healthy, he probably takes some minutes from Shamet and some minutes from Craig. I think that's fair. And then you also don't have to have Mikal playing 38 minutes and Book playing 39 and everything else. But this might be what the rotation is, and Aaron Holiday's impact might have been overstated. I just think it's something to consider, something to think about, something to monitor. The other thing, from a rotation standpoint, from a bench mob vibe check standpoint, that's fascinating here is in the center spot. So tonight you saw JaVale McGee play 10 minutes, and then you saw Bismack Biyombo play 5. This is something that happened against the Bucks every time the Suns played the Bucks this year, and it has been a pattern now, which is that when there is, and I'll be interested to see if it happens on Sunday when Joel Embiid is in town, when there is a front court player who is a genuine threat, somebody that you want a man-to-man defense matchup for that player to be consistently good throughout the game, Monty has tended to give Biyombo a look in those matchups more so than he does in any other kind of matchup. And I think we are headed toward a situation where Biyombo will start to be the go-to for these types of matchups in the playoffs. If the Suns face the Denver Nuggets again, Biyombo will be the guy who I think gets a bigger crack at being Ayton's backup in those games than JaVale McGee does. I think if you see the Suns play, I'm trying to think if there really is another matchup. It may just be something where the Nuggets are the example, but I think out east it's obvious that Giannis is one of those guys. And you might even see it if it's the Warriors, because or the Wolves, that's another example. But the Warriors thing, if the end game there is that it's Draymond Green at the 5, I think you like Biyombo probably better than JaVale. I'm not sure, but my point is that has been a pattern. I think Monty likes that Biyombo is a little bit more mobile, a little bit more sturdy and strong physically, a more aggressive rebounder. He's a guy that can enforce his will on the game more than JaVale McGee, where I think JaVale is somebody who can take advantage with energy and with just length advantage and athleticism advantage. But if it's not a game where it's, if there's a good pick and roll defense, or if he's neutralized in some way, or if he has to go out on the perimeter and try to defend, it's not going to go well. So I think that's where JaVale, his limits start to show up, and you will see Biyombo take those minutes. And it's something that we saw happen. If you go back to Game 4 of the 2018 NBA Finals when the Warriors swept the Cavs, JaVale played 16 minutes in that game. When you go to the bubble where JaVale was part of that Lakers team that won a championship, after about Game 2 or 3 of the Western Conference Finals, which was against this exact Nuggets team, JaVale, his minutes dwindle. He gets out of the starting lineup after the Lakers lose Game 3. By the end of the Western Conference Finals, he's a DNP CD, and then I don't think he played more than 5 minutes in any NBA Finals game. And then again, against the Heat in the Finals, by the end of it, he is a DNP CD, because Bam is a guy that's going to neutralize that, right? That's not something you need to worry about. So JaVale's not going to be able to take advantage of that matchup is what I mean. So that is something that has precedent, that teams that have had JaVale before, even if he plays well for them, he tends to get less and less of a role in the playoffs, especially against teams where his impact is mitigated. The Suns got Biyombo, yes, because he was cheap, yes, because he fits, but I think he also provides a different type of a look than JaVale, and tonight showed us 5 minutes for Biyombo, 10 minutes for JaVale McGee. That could be more of the same come playoff time. And so this was just a really interesting game to see how roles and rotations are going to look now that Chris Paul is back. I think we really did learn a lot. We'll see what happens Sunday, another big test against the Philadelphia 76ers. I will, of course, be here with you guys post-game, just like I am every single Monday. So you can look forward to that. I am going to hope that the Arizona Wildcats do not lose this game. So that is all from me for the week, folks. Thanks for making Locked On Suns your first listen today and every day. Now go make Locked On NBA your second listen to catch up with everything you missed around the NBA on Thursday night.